Hi everyone, we're going to go over how to create some search terms that you can use online in search engines or that you would definitely need to use if you're in an online library. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is what is a Boolean operator. So Boolean operator is used in many different things, including in library databases and sets of databases containing a lot of information so that you can sort and search for information. So for databases, it's a type of logic that we use, and it's a way to connect words together to broaden or narrow search results through inclusion and exclusion. And they aren't necessary for engines like Google, although it can be helpful to use search terms instead of full sentences or questions. But Google is very, very smart. It's been learning since 1998, and it has one of the best search algorithms ever developed. So if you ask a full grammatically correct question in Google, you're going to find probably that most of the top results you get are things you're actually looking for. However, that's not true with some databases, including online library databases, which are very picky and won't show you any results if you use a complete sentence. But that's because Google is definitely designed to be more user-friendly. So the main operations for searches, the first one is used the most commonly. That is the word and, A-N-D, and you'll often see it capitalized, but most search engines databases don't require you to capitalize it. It just helps the user keep track of where their operations are. And the and is going to help you narrow the results. So you'll take two words or two phrases or more and combine them. And what you're saying is that the sources that come back from this search have to use both of those phrases or both of those words. And the more specific you get, the more words and phrases you combine, the fewer results you should get back. And in some databases, this is automatically included if you're putting words in. So for example, transformational leaders, you have two words there. If you don't put quotation marks around transformational leaders, in some databases it will think it's two different words and put an operator between it. And it'll look for the word transformational and it'll look for the word leaders, but not necessarily transformational leaders. So you'll get a lot of results back that are not about transformational leaders, but are about something transformational and anything about leaders. And another operation that you can use is the word or, and that is going to expand your search results, because if you're looking for one thing or another, you're looking for two things to come back, right? So you can have transformational leader and characteristics, so that's saying whatever comes back has to talk about both transformational leaders and characteristics. But if you add or traits, you're saying it can be transformational leaders and characteristics or transformational leaders and traits. So you'll get back more results using or. And then the last operation is not, and that refines your search results so that you can exclude anything that you're not looking for. So if you know you're not looking for something, then go ahead and say not this. So if you're interested in anything about transformational leaders except for information about their development, you can say transformational leaders and characteristics, not development. And that will pull back things that talk about transformational leaders and characteristics, but not development. So you can use just one of those main operators, or you can use two of them together, or all three of them together. And as you go along and you're searching and you're pulling back your search results and you're looking at your search results, if you're not getting what you're looking for, you should be changing and adjusting those. Maybe adding some or words to expand the results, or add some and to narrow the results. Or if you're getting back something that's not helpful, you can use not to exclude those results. Other operations that you can use, one is the quotation mark, and if you put quotation marks around two or more words, it becomes an exact phrase. So you don't need to do it for one word, but two or more means that it has to pull back this exact phrase either in the title of the source, in the abstract of the source, or in the source itself. Somewhere it has to be using this exact phrase. So you want to be careful with this and not include too many words in your exact phrase, or you won't pull anything back. But if you want to make sure you get transformational leadership and not everything transformational and everything about leadership, you can put quotation marks around them. You can also use an asterisk to shorten words to the minimum version of that word with shared letters. So for example, if you want to pull back anything about leaders, leadership, what you should do is shorten the word to leader and end it with an asterisk, and that will pull back anything about leader, leaders, leadership, and even further, if you reduce it to just lead with an asterisk, that will pull back lead, leads, leading, leader, leaders, leadership, and so you're expanding your results by including more versions of that word. You can also use parentheses around words if using a combination of and or, just to make it clear what is together and what's separate. So for example, you can say transformational leader and pull back multiple versions of the word leader, and then in parentheses you can say characteristics or traits to say that you can find sources that have the first piece and either of those second two options. And the types of info, if you're looking for specific titles, specific authors, specific years, you can put those in parentheses after the word to indicate that you want that to be in the title, or you want a year of publication to be that specific year. So when you're brainstorming search terms, you need to have a topic picked, number one, otherwise you're going to be all over the place. So for example, if I'm writing a report or an essay about transformational leadership, I have my topic. I'm going to be writing something about transformational leadership that's still too broad because you could write like a whole book on that, but it's giving me somewhere to start. And probably I'll be writing about the characteristics required to be a transformational leader, but I'm going to do a little searching first to see what comes back. So the questions that you would ask about that topic, what do you want to know or learn about the topic? You want to brainstorm those questions. And if you're not sure what to ask, you can do some preliminary research where you just search transformational leadership, see what comes up, and see if there's anything of interest to you to help you either narrow down your topic at that point or figure out what to ask. And you can also do some pre-writing activities like brainstorming, so that if you can't think of anything, you have somewhere to start. So for example, the journalist questions are good for this, where you say who, what, when, where, why, and how about your topic. And so we have some questions here that you might ask about transformational leadership, like what is transformational leadership? What are the characteristics of transformational leaders? How can someone develop into a transformational leader? Who are famous transformational leaders? What are the drawbacks of transformational leadership? And what are the benefits of transformational leadership? And in all of those questions, you have main words that are the most important aspect of that question. So I'm only going to underline transformational leadership once, but notice how it comes up in every question because that's what I'm wondering about. That's my main topic. So that is my main search term, transformational leader or transformational leadership. And then I have other words that pop up in those sentences that are the other main words that I would be searching for. So characteristics, develop, famous, drawbacks, benefits. And so I want to take those and I want to identify any synonyms and any base forms of those words. So for example, if I want to really broaden up transformational leadership to include leading, leaders, leadership, I would take transformational leadership down to lead with the asterisk so that I get those multiple forms of leading, leader, etc. And that's my main search term that I'm going to use. And then I have characteristics, which could also be called traits. So that's a synonym for the word characteristics. And if you're not sure what the synonyms would be off the top of your head, try looking at a thesaurus, but keep in mind that the thesaurus uses similar words that might not be exactly what you're looking for, so be picky when you're saying, yes, characteristics or traits, that's really what you mean, what you think that they'll be using for word choices in their article. Another word that we can get down to its base form is the word develop, because that'll include develops, developed, develop, developing, development. It'll include all of those. So I'll just use the word develop with an asterisk if I'm going to search for that. And then we have famous. Another word for that could be well-known or example. And then drawback, some synonyms could be pitfall or difficulty. And benefit, another synonym could be advantage. And if you do have a word where there's really no synonyms, don't worry about it. That's fine. You don't have to have all kinds of synonyms identified for all of your search terms. And then you're going to go ahead and create those search term strings. So I have some examples here. The top one, transformational lead. So again, I'll get leadership, leaders, and so on. And I'm looking for characteristics or traits. So it has to be transformational leaders, leadership, and characteristics, or the traits, whatever word that the authors ended up using in their article. It'll help bring back more sources for me. And I have another one. It has to be exactly transformational leader and some version of the word develop, develops, developed, developing, development. Another search term string that I'm going to use, transformational lead and famous or well-known or example. And notice how I'm not putting these all together. So I'm not saying transformational leader and characteristics or traits and develop and famous or well-known or example and drawbacks or this and that, because that's too much. You're not going to get anything back. So usually it is your main search term and one additional term to refine it or to reduce it, narrow it down by, or maybe two. And at that point, you start getting too few sources back if you keep going past that point. And then I have a not example here, transformational leadership or leaders, not servant lead. And what I mean here is that transformational leadership and servant leadership are two very similar types of leadership. And so they often get talked about together. And if I do not want anything about servant leadership, I can put that in there as a not operation and refine it so that only transformational leadership articles that don't mention servant leadership come back. However, keep in mind that there may be some good sources that talk about both, and you're only going to use that source to talk about transformational leadership. Just keep that in mind. And then if you're in an online library database or a very narrow database, you may see other keywords and terms come back if there's something like a detailed record that's provided to you. So for example, in an online library database, there'll be a detailed record that talks about authors, publication, so on. And they'll usually have something like terms or subject terms. And that is something that has been entered for that source because somebody says that it talks about that. And usually there's multiple terms there. And so you can look at those terms and see if there's any that you're missing. So for example, if I'm looking at transformational leadership, one article came back and it of course has transformational leadership as a subject term, but it also has mental health services. Well, that's unrelated to my specific transformational leadership topic. It's tangential. Positive psychology, tangential. Meaning, tangential. leadership training may or may not be what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for something about development, knowing that people talk about it as leadership training as a keyword, key term search might help me. So I'm going to pop on over to an online library database here as an example. And so this is the Business Source Premier database. And you can see that it is set up for a keyword search already, although if you're looking for something else, you can change that. And this is where I would type in what I'm searching for. And make sure you spell it correctly. So for example, if I'm looking for transformational leadership, I get 945 results. And the database does put the most likely or most similar results first and the least similar last, but it still might not be enough help. So for example, the first result here, a renewed vision at hospital UPR, not what I'm looking for. Here's one, mediating role of commitment to change and moderating role of transformational leadership. Maybe if I'm looking at change management. Transformational leadership and turnover intentions. The Agile board, I'm not sure. I would need to click into it to get more information. And so I'm going to try to reduce this and say I need transformational leadership and traits. And if I just put the word trait in there, I get 45 responses. And if I say trait asterisk, so it includes traits, I still get the same results here. Okay, so transformational leaders bridging the gap between between goal ambiguity and public value involvement, maybe. Transformational leadership synergy, that sounds interesting. And then I would click on it to see what it's about. And here you can see the other subject terms that are included, so organizational change, change management, innovation, and then it says in the abstract what the article is about, and you can see that it is highlighting by bolding, emphasizing here, the search terms, transformational leadership, trait theory. So maybe, I would put this on my maybe list, and it's definitely focused on change management. So if I wanted to write a report or essay about transformational leadership as a factor or its impact on change management, this would definitely be a source that I would use. But if I'm like, still not sure, gonna go back to the results list. And I can keep looking through my results. 45 is not too many to look through. And then I can also change my search terms. So maybe I'm going to do transformational leadership and develop. So that I get developed, developing, development, and so on. So leadership style will secure talent for insurance industry. Pretty specific that it's focusing on the insurance industry. Leadership and coping behavior during organizational change. I'm getting some of the same results. Role of goal specificity in the relationship between leadership and empowerment. The blunt truth, I'm not sure what that's about. I'd have to look into it. And so if this is not working for you, you can try being more specific and say it has to be the word development. I get 247. Many of the same responses though for that. I could also say transformational leadership and training. So this is interesting, the role of interpersonal exchange and transformational leadership, that came up with our trait search as well. So that one I would probably look into. Here's an example of where we could say not this. So we have an example of my search brought back servant leadership. And so we could add not servant leadership so that it wouldn't bring back those findings. So safety culture. how to advance in your career when your boss won't help. And so you would go in, check out the abstract, see if it's something that you think would help you with your topic, and if so, save it, go to the permalink, and you can grab this, brings you back to the actual article on the database, and you have to grab the permalink. You can't grab the URL at the top because that is not an actual link. This is the permanent link. So you have to grab the permalink, or you can email it to yourself, which I highly recommend so that you don't forget that you have it. And you just put your email in, and then you can say what you want to call the subject. You can say include a PDF, so you can save that, which is nice. And then if you need to use citation format, like APA citation, it'll ask you what citation format do you want included, and it will send that along with it so that you are automatically provided with the source and the citation that you'll need for your reference entry. And if you want just your citation, you can go over here on the right hand side to the word cite, find APA, and you can copy and paste this into a Word document and keep it for later. So the online library is very helpful with that, and you want to keep track of your sources, keep track of your citations if they're giving them to you. And I'm going to pop over to Google as an example of that. So now I'm on just the open internet on Google. And again, I like Google because it's one of the oldest and it's one of the smartest algorithms for bringing back what I'm looking for. And so I'm going to say transformational leadership and development. And so unlike the online library, which would give you like 100, 200 maybe results, this one is bringing us back 38 million, which is too much for me to look through, obviously. But it does try to prioritize the most likely matches are put first. So here, what is transformational leadership? Wikipedia is almost always somewhere toward the top. But remember, for most academic sources and business sources, you know, papers, essays, you wouldn't want to use Wikipedia. It's just not trustworthy enough. You'd want to find a better source. And so transformational leadership development programs, lots here. And I will say another place you can look is Google Scholar, which will narrow it down a bit more. And Google Scholar is only going to give you scholarly sources. So journal articles, for example. And you can pull back fewer. So instead of 38 million, I've got 358,000. Slightly better. Still too many for me to go through. But you can see that there are some possibly good ones. Are you a transformational leader? That might be relevant to what I'm writing. 2 decades of research and development in transformational leadership. And so you can click on it. The only issue with Google Scholar is that you do not necessarily have free access to everything. So here, for example, this is a journal article. And if we want it, we are probably going to have to purchase it, which I don't recommend doing. That's the point where you would move over to the online library database and look for it there. All right, so that's how you can use Boolean operators, the and, or, and not, to help expand, narrow, or refine your search. And you can do that both, you know, you have to do that in the online library pretty much. And then you can also do it if you're using Google or a narrower database like Google Scholar to help find what you're looking for.